Okay, good evening, everybody. We are live on YouTube, so I will welcome you to the City of Beaumont's regular council meeting of Tuesday, May 10th, 2022, starting here at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. And I will begin our meeting as we always do with our land acknowledgement. And we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6 and the Métis homeland. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We're all treaty people. The peace treaties bind us all. With that also, I have this time 3 proclamations to write this evening, not 5, only got 3 tonight. So I'll begin with our first proclamation, Economic Development Week, May 9th to 13th. Whereas International Economic Development Council is the largest professional economic development organization dedicated to serving economic developers, and whereas for almost 50 years, Economic Developers Alberta has been Alberta's leading economic development network, committed to advancing the economic development profession by providing resources, professional development, and networking opportunities. And whereas economic developers promote economic well-being and quality of life for their communities by creating, retaining, and expanding jobs that facilitate growth, enhance wealth, and provide a stable tax base. And whereas economic developers stimulate and incubate entrepreneurism in order to help establish the next generation of new businesses, which is the hallmark of Alberta's economy. And whereas economic developers are engaged in a wide variety of settings, including rural and urban, local, state, provincial, and federal governments, public-private partnerships, chambers of commerce, universities, and a variety of other institutions. And whereas economic developers attract and retain high-quality jobs, develop vibrant communities, and improve the quality of life in their regions. And whereas economic developers work in the City of Beaumont, now therefore be resolved that I, Mayor Bill Daneluik, do hereby proclaim May 9th to 13th, 2022 as Economic Development Week in the City of Beaumont, dated 20th of April, 2022. Proclamation for Apoxia Awareness Day, May 14th, 2022. Whereas childhood apoxia of speech is a challenging speech disorder that affects nearly 1 in 1,000 children. And whereas children and childhood apoxia of speech will not learn to speak without frequent, intensive, and appropriate speech therapy. And whereas a lack of appropriate speech therapy intervention may impact not only communication, but also individual outcomes in education, independence, mental awareness, and employment. And whereas public awareness about childhood apoxia of speech, of speech is essential for the families of children with childhood apraxia of speech and professionals support them to best advocate for needed services for children learning to use their own voice. And whereas our highest respect goes to children with childhood apraxia of speech and to their families for their effort, determination, and resilience in the face of obstacles. And whereas Beaumont residents are encouraged to light up their homes and businesses in blue on May 14th to lend their support and to help spread awareness about this worthy cause. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Daneluik, do hereby proclaim May 14th, 2022 as Apraxia Awareness Day in the City of Beaumont, dated 9th of April, 2022. Sorry, 1 second here. Lastly, proclamation National Public Works Week, May 15th to 21st, 2022. Ready and resilient. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Beaumont. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, solid waste systems, public buildings, other structures, and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Beaumont, Alberta, to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest, understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their community. And whereas the year 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Daneluik, do hereby proclaim May 15th to 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Week in the City of Beaumont, dated April 14th, 2022. Thank you. With that, move on to our agenda. Item number 2, adoption of the agenda. Administration, are there any amendments to the agenda this evening? Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. Administration does not have any adjustments to the agenda this evening.
Thank you. Is a member of council willing to move adoption of the agenda this evening? Councillor McCook.
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you, Cap. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote accordingly. Councillor Tessier, do you approve? Thank you very much. And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Those listening at home, Councillor Tessier is joining us by Zoom from his home this evening for tonight's council meeting. We move on to the consent agenda. We have 3 items, council, on the consent agenda. The first being 5A, regular council meeting of April 26th, 2022. And 7B, Municipal Government Act Section 347 request. And 7E, Events Committee member appointment. Is there a member of council willing to move adoption of the consent agenda? Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'd move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Items 5A, 7B, and 7E. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote accordingly. Councillor Tessier, how do you vote visually? I see you raising your hand. Thank you. Council, the vote carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We now move into our, before I go any further, just let remind council administration, we will be taking a break at 6:30 for 15 minutes for a very quick dinner break since we began our deliberation at 5 o'clock, the special council meeting. So we're going to try and finish at 6:30 for a quick 15-minute break, then continue with our agenda. We are now moving into the next part of our agenda is 6A, public hearings, Triomphe Estates Outline Plan Amendment. Who will be speaking from administration to this? Is it Ms. Sangster, I'm assuming? Ms. Winter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just get you to go over the public hearing procedures to open the public hearing, and then I will state the purpose of the hearing.
Okay. I don't have it here in my handouts.
It's in the agenda, Mayor.
Oh, hang on a second. I'm in the wrong spot here. Sorry about that. Sorry, council administration, give me 1 minute to get where I need to get to. My computer shut down. I didn't expect that.
I'm gonna try to, yeah.
One second here, sorry. I apologize. We are now opening the agenda for a non-statutory public hearing to be held on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And in the council chamber of Beaumont, City Administration, amendment to Triumph's estate outline plan by resolution. Is that correct, Ms. Winter?
I have the meeting procedure, the procedure up here on there. If you would like to read number 1 and then
Thank you.
declare the meeting, the public hearing open, and then I will go on to number 2.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you.
I declare the non-statutory public hearing open and state that the hearing is held pursuant to the sections 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. Ms. Winter?
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of the non-statutory public hearing is to amend the Triomphe Estates outline plan. The notice of the non-statutory public hearing was given in writing to the assessed landowners, the applicant, adjacent property owners, and the school boards and agencies. The non-statutory public hearing notice was advertised in the local newspaper on April 22nd and April 29th, 2022. The non-statutory public hearing notice was advertised on the Beaumont's website on April 22nd, 2022, and there's no written submissions to read into the record at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I now declare the public hearing open. Is that correct? Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak in favor of the amendment?
Mayor, the first presentation will be administration.
Okay,
Mr. Joannis Wong will be, oh, sorry, my apologies, Ms. Emily Sangster will be doing the presentation first. And then the applicant is here for any questions that council may have.
Okay.
And then we'll go into whether or not we have anyone in favor and opposed or any persons deemed affected.
thank you. Ms. Sangster?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Emily Sangster. I'm a long-range planner with the city. I'll be introducing the application that is the subject of this non-statutory public hearing for an amendment to the Triomphe Estates Outline Plan. I'll begin by providing a brief overview of the application, and will then be happy to respond to any questions you may have before we continue with the hearing and then consider the resolution to adopt the amendment. The applicant's representative is also on hand to respond to questions this evening. So the subject lands for this proposal are in the Triomphe Estates neighborhood, which is bounded by Glenberry Meadows to the west, Forest Heights to the north, Range Road 241 to the east, and the future Lakeview neighborhood to the south. This application proposes to amend the land use concept to alter the alley, pathway, and local roadway configuration in the southeast area of the neighborhood. And this is to ensure compatibility and connectivity with surrounding development. You can see the current land use concept in attachment 4 of the council package and the proposed land use concept in attachment 5. So more specifically, the proposed amendment reconfigures the local road network east of 38th Street and south of Triomphe Boulevard, eliminating a cul-de-sac. It eliminates a north-south alley connection just east of 38th Street and south of Triomphe Boulevard that did not properly connect to planned development in the Lakeview neighborhood. And finally, it incorporates a north-south walkway to improve pedestrian connectivity between 42nd Avenue and the Lakeview neighborhood to the south. I'll just note that this reconfiguration does not result in any changes to the overall policy direction of the outline plan, to the land use statistics, or to the overall unit density in the plan area. The proposed amendment does include some minor text amendments, and this is just to update the outline plan document to reflect the current policy and legislative context, and also the development that's been completed since the outline plan was first approved in 2015. As noted, this proposed amendment has been circulated to nearby landowners and relevant technical agencies through our usual circulation process, and no concerns have been raised. And if approved, this amendment will allow the lands to be developed in accordance with the city's overall land use planning framework, with appropriate connections to adjacent neighborhoods. And so administration supports the adoption of this amendment. And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you might have before we continue with the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Sangster. Are there any questions from council for our presenter from administration on this topic? Councillor Tessier, do you have any questions? If not, that's fine. Thank you. Seeing no questions from administration or from council for administration, thank you very much. Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. The ask will now if anyone is in favor of the amendment, if there's anyone wishing to speak.
That's what I figured. Thank you for clarifying that. Is there anybody in attendance this evening wishing to speak in favor of the amendment in the public?
Hi, my name is, thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Bladen Dibben with Select Engineering Consultants, and I'm here on behalf of the landowner. We don't have a presentation, just here to happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. That was my assumption. You're here to answer questions. That's fine. Thank you. Any questions from council for our second presenter briefly there, Mr. Dibben? Seeing none, thank you.
Mayor,
Ms. Winter,
Councillor
yes.
Tessier has a question.
Oh, sorry. Pardon me, Renee. I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead. Councillor Tessier, you have the floor.
That's okay. Just a comment, I guess, like I don't like removing cul-de-sacs, but I understand the change because of that alleyway was just going to a dead end. Is that correct? Is that what happened? From what I hear, that's the reason for the change, right?
Yes, that's correct. It was proposed by administration actually that the alleyway it wasn't a dead end. It sort of backtracked onto itself. It's not at a right angle, but yes, ultimately this is due to the alley configuration.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? No. Is anybody present wishing to speak against the proposal in the public hearing? Seeing none? All right, I'll declare the, go ahead, Ms. Winter.
Now we'll ask if any person is in attendance who deem themselves affected, who wishes to be heard.
Clarification points. Anybody else in present who deem themselves to be affected by this amendment who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I'm okay to then close the public hearing, correct? With that, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Thank you very much. Move on to the next part of our agenda.
Mayor, we do have a motion arising out of this.
Yes,
I'll pop it up on the screen.
is member council willing to move the aforementioned motion? Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that item 6A, Triomphe Estates Outline Plan Amendment, as set out in attachment 2 of the May 10th, 2022 report be approved.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion on the motion from members of council? Councillor Tessier, any questions on the motion? I'm assuming not. And council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion accordingly. Thank you. Councillor Tessier, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor. Council, that motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That takes care of item 6A, I believe, Ms. Winter. Thank you. Moving on then to our agenda is item 7A, Community Grant Funding Program Awards. I believe Ms. Ma will be presenting from the committee.
Hello.
Oh, we have two presenters. Great. You're not Kashmir.
I am not.
No, that's fine. So please state your names for the record, please, and then speak
My
in the
name is
microphone.
Joanna Mancher, Team Lead Arts and Events with the City of Beaumont.
Thank you.
And I'm Amy Ma, not Kashmir.
That's fine. Please
So-
proceed.
I'm just here representing our Community Grant Advisory Committee. There are 5 members of this committee currently, and we meet twice a year. There are 2 grant intakes, and our job is to review in detail all of the applications, and we put them then through our own personal scoring matrices. We then meet with all the members of our committee, discuss all of our opinions, and review all of everyone's opinions. Sorry, I said that twice. We then vote and conclude on our set of funding amounts. The committee takes our work very seriously to execute the mandates and comply with the set guidelines. We received 7 applications this year, and as you can see on page, I believe 71 and 72 of your agenda, we have recommended 4 such applications for funding at the set amounts that you will see there. And all of our recommendations are based on our interpretations of the guidelines and how the grants could best help our community. Does anyone have any questions about our advice this year?
Thank you very much. Succinct. That's nice. Always nice to see. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Any members of council have questions for our presenters on the community grants program? Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor first. Go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you very much. And thank you, ladies, for the presentation. Appreciate the work you've done. I know it's hard work. Glad that you're able to do it and look into the details. I guess the first thing that jumped out at me is that we have 3 of the 4 are from arts organizations. And I'm just wondering if this is in addition to the funding we've set aside for the arts, or is this coming out of that fund that we've already established?
It is my understanding that there's $70,000 set aside for the community grants program each and every year. And that has nothing to do with any other budgets that are approved by council or the city.
Okay, and then maybe to Ms. Mancher, if a group gets a grant from this particular grant program, are they also eligible to get a grant from the arts grant as well, or is it one or the other?
Currently at this time, the guidelines do not restrict groups from applying for funding from multiple sources. I can say that during the application process, they're required to indicate the funding they have received from the City of Beaumont from the past 4 years. So that is part of the consideration that the committees take into account while reviewing applications.
Okay, but nothing is prohibiting them from getting from both, but probably not for the same. Well, I'm guessing that your criteria might say you wouldn't be getting the same money for the same activity, that there'd be a different application.
There's nothing explicitly through Mayor to Councillor Barnhart, there's nothing explicitly prohibiting that. However, during the application process, applicants are required to submit project budgets that outline their sources of revenue and funding. And again, that would be taken into consideration during the evaluation process.
Okay, thank you. One last question, if I may, Mayor.
Please.
Just slightly different topic. Are the parameters of this grant such that if an agency wanted to provide some type of a social service that was not covered by FCSS, that they could apply for this grant for that? Is there anything that prohibits a social service agency from?
There is not.
But they must be nonprofit, is my understanding.
There, as per the guidelines, there's a list of eligible organizations, community nonprofits, First Nations and Métis settlements, foundations established and regulated under the province's Regional Health Authorities Act, universities, colleges, and institutes as defined under the Alberta Post-Secondary Learning Act. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for answering my questions.
Any further questions from council? Councillor Tessier, do you have a question for our presenters? Seeing none. No other questions from council. I have a question, if you don't mind. I understand 3 groups were not recommended for funding. The reasons for that, were they not eligible based on the criteria? Is that the reason for the 3?
I believe 2 of the 3 we believed were ineligible based on the set guidelines.
Okay.
And then the remaining one, our committee determined that it really didn't benefit the city at all.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, seeing no further questions for our presenters, thank you ladies for joining us this evening, much appreciated. And I will be asking a member of council to provide a motion to approve the recommendations is on the screen in front of us here. Does a member of council will you make this motion? Councillor Miller, please. Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the allocations for the April 2022 community grants be approved as follows. I'll just say as presented.
Yeah, that's sufficient saying presented, Ms. Winter. Yeah, as presented. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Council, any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I will ask you to vote accordingly. Councillor Tessier, your vote, please.
In favor.
Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you for your work. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, council. With that, we are at roughly 6:22. I would prefer we take the break for supper now, rather than going to our next topic of discussion, which will be 7C, Beaumont Social Enterprise and Food Bank Collective Business Proposal Feasibility Report. With that, I'll declare a 15-minute recess. We'll reconvene at promptly at
Is outside of the normal process for funding approval. Should council approve the funds, administration recommends that council approve a draw on a one-time basis for $60,000 from the Financial Stabilization Reserve. Administration would also recommend that the organization be required to enter into our standard grant agreement with the city that would include reporting requirements and other deliverables. For the 2 years and beyond, the organization is requesting funding to support their ongoing operations. Because the city funds operating expenditures from ongoing revenue sources, an increase to the tax levy would be necessary and equivalent to about 0.1%. Administration recommends the organization apply for funding through the city's community grants program. Also, council will have the opportunity to adjust the funding for this program as part of the annual budget process. Hope that clarifies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Appreciate that report. Now, council, we have several choices this evening with this report. It can be received as information and it will be received as simply as that. We also have the ability, should council wish to pursue funding at this point, Mr. Dahl and his team have advised us that we can do the $60,000 initial payment from the Financial Stabilization Reserve, which allows us to proceed at this point if we want to. So having said that and set the tone for the discussion going forward, any questions from council for our presenter on this topic, please? Councillor vanNieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question, and maybe admin might be able to answer this. The 60-40-20 presented previously, alongside the 20,000, it says 20,000 each year proceeding. in accordance with the City of Beaumont's social master plan. I'm just wondering if admin can help with that link to the master plan. I did a quick view and I'm not seeing what link they're trying to cast with that 20,000. And I know that's a pretty detailed question. It's just, I'm not sure where that link is. So
I'll
thank
do
you.
my best to answer through the mayor to Councillor vanNieuwkerk. It's around food security. That's how it relates back to the social master plan. We also see in our FCSS department that very often referrals are made to outside of the community into Leduc. So having the food bank present in our community would help with our FCSS referrals as well.
Yeah, so the goal is food security, accessible and available locally.
Correct.
And that would be the support for that. Okay, thank you. I like it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tessier, do you have a question by any chance? I'll give you the opportunity if you do. If you do, if you don't, that's fine. Seeing no, thank you very much. Councillor Monkoff-Swain, Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I'm sorry, first off, I think this is a no-brainer for us to look at in the first year. I would like to see a motion for that 60,000, but I did have a question around the 20,000 and each year proceeding that Councillor vanNieuwkerk raised. When the presenters were here prior, they talked about, needing some initial funding to get going and then hoping to be sustainable after year 3. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I interpreted that was kind of 3 years of funding and then they would be self-sufficient. Here I'm seeing that's different than what was presented to us. So I wondered if you could speak to that.
Councillor Monkoff-Swain, I don't have more information at this time. In speaking with the community group, that's what they requested as we pulled together this report. It was $20,000 each year in annual operating costs.
Okay. Yeah, again, to get and I'm sure they're dying to answer the question. I'm not sure the process here. Yeah, for me, I think this is a great initiative, community-led. We said all the great words last time when they were in front of us. So I think we should support this definitely in the first year. And as this points out here, we've got a budget process that we can look to solidify this. So that sounds good to me.
Thank you, Councillor. Are you looking to make a motion at this point? Or are you prepared to have a couple of questions fielded first? What would you like to do? Oh, sorry.
That was my fault. I jumped off. No, and this is happy for questions at this point. I shouldn't have tipped my hat to a motion yet. Sorry.
That's okay. And what I've done with administration is take liberty of having some motions prepared because we did have several choices in this situation. That's not really the norm. So we have some motions prepared in case the council wants to make that motion or a motion besides just information services received. So Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor, followed by Councillor Miller. So Kathy, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. And I too am in support of funding this now, and I look forward to the motion that's coming up. My comment, in the previous report that came to us about the grants, I did ask about social services. So to the administration, would this possibly be eligible to be in that grant program in the future?
Ms. O'Neill?
Yes. Good. Okay, because that was where I was it would go, so that we don't have too many, like the whole idea of the grant funding was so we didn't have one-offs, and we had a committee and a community group set up to look at these in detail, because we did have a presentation, so we have seen it in quite a bit of detail. My second question, if I may, Mayor, is just, have they become a nonprofit yet, or is that still in the works? I should say not a society.
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, to my knowledge, no, it has not been set up as a not-for-profit yet. However, it will be run through the Leduc and District Food Bank, which is a not-for-profit.
So they would need to be completed that before they would receive any funding? Is that what you're saying? I couldn't hear everything you said. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's me. It's not you. It's okay. Just speak closer and then I can hear.
Your question around not-for-profit status as it applies to the Leduc and District Food Bank, yes, they are a not-for-profit. Once the Circle thrift store gets set up, they are currently not a not-for-profit, but would need to become a not-for-profit if they are the organization that would be applying for the community grants program.
So the food bank in Leduc will get the
Correct.
the dollars, which they'll spend here, I realize that, and then later on it will be transferred over to the other group, and that'll be a condition of the grant.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to clarify, Councillor Barnard's earlier question. So your question, I believe, was saying that in the third and subsequent years, they could apply to the community grants program. Is that what the question you were asking? Go ahead, Kathy. There you go.
I don't know why we'd have to wait till the third year. I guess part of it would be why not the second year?
Right. I guess my question is then, the community grants program has a maximum of 10,000 for an application, right? So they're looking for 20. They'd have to only get 10 for the community grant program, just so we're clarifying. They could apply for it, but they only get a maximum of 10 is my understanding from the community grants program. So just a little food for thought.
I guess
understood
I'm
your
having some
question, but
difficulty with
there's a
some of
cap
that
there.
because that amount was kind of said in the past, and I'm not sure how relevant that would be in the future.
May not be.
Maybe that's looking at those
Okay,
grant
just to clarify.
eligibility requirements, because it's going to
Okay.
be a problem for other organizations as well,
Okay, thank you.
potentially.
So
Thank you.
I'll go to Councillor Miller. Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to clarify before I'd be willing to make a motion tonight, but just to clarify, we are only talking about the $60,000 as a draw approval from the reserve, right? We are not discussing the 40 or the 20 after. So
That
it
is
really
correct.
doesn't. Okay. So in that case, I would be prepared to make that motion if administration wants to bring it up.
Ms. Winter,
There's no
if
other
you could, please.
conversation. Oh, I see Sam has, no. Okay.
Councillor Miller, please
Okay.
proceed.
All right. I move that by the end of 2022, administration negotiate and approve a funding agreement that will allow the city to provide a one-time grant in the amount of $60,000 to be funded from the Financial Stabilization Reserve to the Community Circle Thrift Center and Leduc and District Food Bank for the purpose of establishing a food bank in Beaumont.
Thank you, Councillor. Council, discussion on the motion, please. Councillor Markov Swain, you wish to speak? Go ahead, Sam. Oh, hang on. There we go.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm in support of this motion. I guess my question would be, I'll frame it this way. If I'm starting a business and I'm looking for some seed funding to get going and I needed 3 years worth to be able to make that decision. Right now, we're only giving support for year one, recognizing that we can only do budgets on an annual basis. I think I've heard the conversation around this table that council is in support of this, but I'm just, does this give enough certainty for the organization to start up, knowing that the 40 and potentially the future 20 is for future decisions on council?
Ms. O'Neill, do you wish to make a comment to that? If you're able to, if you're not, that's fine. It's an observation by Councilor Markov Swain for future consideration.
I'm kind of looking for a wink and a nod from, yeah. Yeah, and that's where I was going, and I don't think that, I mean, how do you word this? Like kind of like a promise ring, but obviously administration's given thought about this and only looking to provide the in this 2022. We've obviously got a budget coming up this year, and personally, I'd like to see that solidified within an operations budget, so that we're not having to go back through grant processes and ask us every year. But maybe to Mr. Dowler here, is there a way that we can provide some?
Before we go to Mr. Dowler, Ms. Winter, you need to have something to say, please. Ms. Winter?
I can just wait till Mr. Dowler answers the question, and then I can maybe give a little bit of advice to council.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I said, I'll just wait for Mr. Dowler to answer the question, and then I might be able to provide some advice to council.
Thank you. Mr. Dowler, if you could, please.
And I'll phrase my question a bit more succinct. Is there a way that we can give more certainty in this motion? I'll leave it there.
Mr. Dowler?
Yeah, certainly there's one way to do or provide more certainty through the motion, and that would be to change that 60,000 to 120. knowing that it would be paid out for over the 3 years. Again, the funding source would have to be the financial stabilization reserve. But yeah, I mean, that would be the quickest, easiest way to provide the most certainty for those 3 years.
Thank you. Can
Can I answer your question? Yeah, please continue.
Did you want to?
One last point, Mike. Could everyone pull their mics a little closer to their faces so we can hear better? I'm having a little time hearing today. It could just be me, but indulge me if you don't mind having your mics closer. Would appreciate that. Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. The other option, if council did not want to, if anyone wasn't willing to have a friendly amendment to the current motion on the floor to the 120 from the 60, we could also look at, after passing this one, doing a subsequent motion, maybe directing the future funding years to the budget discussions.
Okay. Councilman Goff-Swain, do you wish to continue the conversation? Go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
for me, if we're in for 60, we're in for 120. Like we need to be able to provide enough stability that this organization has put in a lot of effort, and I think it's going to be great for our community can get there, and knowing that they've got that budget there. So I know we've got a motion on the floor, but I don't know if it's a friendly amendment. That's kind of maybe not friendly under the terms of our rules, but I would like to see that 120 rolled out over the years, as to Mr. Dowler's point, just so that this organization can go away knowing that they're not going to have to come back next year and all that sort of stuff. So that's where I lean anyway. Thank you.
So before we go to a friendly amendment or ask the motion carrier to allow that, Mr. Dowler, just to clarify, if you don't mind, please, you're suggesting it is financially responsible to look at doing 120 from the financial stabilization reserve, but paid it over 3 years out of 60, 40, 20 split. Is that, just to clarify for my purpose, if you wouldn't mind, please, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm getting a little bit tripped up on financially responsible. But that aside, what I would say is yes. I think if the wish of council is to provide that certainty for the full 3 years, I think there's a way to structure the motion such that you would approve the whole 120. But then the second part of adjusting the motion in front of council right now would be to be very specific as to the amounts that get paid out in 2022, 23, and 24. So it would be 60, 40, 20, and be very explicit about that in the motion as well.
Right. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah.
So before I look for any kind of friendly amendment, I'd like to go to Councillors vanNieuwkerk and Councillor McCook for their comments before we start to muddy the waters slightly in a very good way, just on this motion. So Councillor vanNieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor first. Oh, sorry. Pardon me. Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out with regards to this, it would not be a friendly amendment. We would have an amending motion to it if
Okay.
council wishes to raise it up to the 120.
Or you can withdraw and we can start from scratch or something. We'll get to that. Okay. It's okay. So Councillor vanNieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, if I would have pushed my button first, I think I would have said everything that Councillor Malkoff-Swain said. I believe the history in this chair over here would say words something like, let's go, or if we're in, we're in. So, for me, I would like to see some certainty for the organization in the 60, 40, 20, taking into consideration what Ms. Winter just provided around these motions and cleaning this up nicely with the wording for 60 in this year, and then 40 in the subsequent and 20 after. And that's all I'll add at this point, because everything else has been said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook. Kat, you have the floor.
Ditto.
Ditto.
Just going to
Good enough.
reiterate
Ditto works in council.
what Steve said. Councillor vanNieuwkerk said. I agree that I think it's a lot to get things set up and to offer them some certainty through more than just 1 year would be beneficial for the community as well. So I would be in favor of the amendment to the motion.
Okay. I believe actually we'll have to probably redo the motion, but that's okay. I think I said amended a moment ago, or friendly. That was my fault. So you said friendly first? Okay, well, we're both very friendly today. Councillor Tessier, before we go back to Councillor Barnard, do you have a comment or not? I saw your hand go up for a second there. Are you okay?
Wasn't working, sorry. No, my hand wasn't up, but agree with everyone. I'm 100% in.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard. Over to you, Kathy.
You, Mayor. I'm in favor of changing the motion, to put it that way, because I do think we have to give certainty. But I'm just not sure whether this is then becoming a line item in our budget. Is that? So I need some help understanding where that is going. And maybe I'll ask Mr. Dowler, how do you see this going in the future? Because I'm not having any difficulty with the funding. It's just, $120,000 is % increase in taxes if it's coming there. And I'm just looking at it. So many grant programs we have and ways to fund this. I'm just kind of hoping that we can be more creative about how we fund it. So if you could just give me some thoughts on how that would look.
Yeah, it's a good question, Councillor Barnhart. And I think for the purpose of this evening, what I've heard so far as one possible way for council to move forward is providing that certainty for the next 3 years. I think within that framework, what this would then become is a budget item in 2022 that would then be carried forward into 23 and then subsequently again in 24. At any given point in time, I think what we can do as administration is bring forward, maybe in the 23 budget, it could be in the 24 budget, an alternative way to provide ongoing funding for the group. I think there's been conversations going on around the community grants program itself. What does that look like going forward? And then there other possibility is to move this forward or present it to council as something similar to Blues and Roots kind of scenario where there's a $50,000 or $20,000 in this case line item in the budget on an ongoing basis until some point in the future where council or the organization or administration brings forward a different option on it. So I think for tonight, if there's certainty that's required by council, there's a way to achieve it. But I believe, going forward, what we would be looking at doing is making sure that that arrangement as it relates to the organization itself and the city provides the best option for sustainability going forward. So there's the short term, and then there's probably the longer term conversation around how to create funding for the organization.
So I've got Kathy still on the line here. Sam, did you want to speak any further, Ms. Barnhart, before we go any further?
What I'm suggesting is that perhaps the motion reads that we take what we need out of the financial stabilization reserve for this year, and that the administration returns with funding sources for year 2 and 3. Is that a possible way to go, Mr. Dollar? Is that a summary of what you said?
If that's what council wishes, I think there's a way to word the motion such that it does provide that. I think without it being explicitly stated in this motion, that was the intent of what administration was proposing, that we would deal with the $60,000 for this year and then bring forward the additional asks in a budget process. But again, it comes around to the certainty question. And so again, if there's a desire to create more certainty, there's some changes to the motion that would be required or that would be recommended.
So having said that, before I come back to you, Councillor Barnhart, I'll ask you to consider perhaps withdrawing your motion and allowing administration to draft a new one that you can make that incorporates what the mood of the council. Mood of council to me seems to want to have stability over the 3 years. That's kind of where we're at. So give some thought to that. In the meantime, I'll go to Councillor Muckoff-Swain, or need to go to Ms. Winter first. Ms. Winter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Depending on which way council is going to go, I would recommend not to withdraw this current motion and do an amending motion to this motion.
If that's
Should
easier.
a counselor wish to make another motion amending the current motion, we can suspend the main motion and deal with the.
Okay, so we'll leave the current motion on the table for right now. I'll go to Sam for some comments and then I'll entertain anybody from council.
Should a counselor wish to make an amending motion on the current motion, then we can do that.
Okay, if that's the easier way to do it, that's fine. Councilor Swain, Sam, you have the floor and then we'll continue to dance.
Yeah, so just for clarity, because I did talk about long-term operations line item in the budget, and I think I confused a few people on that, so I apologize. I think we need to provide the 120,000 certainty tonight over the 3 years that allows administration to work with the organization to come up with whatever those sources might be. We don't know if it's 20 grand, giving them 3 years to look at their operating approach, and that may change. So I just want to provide 120,000 this year to be from the stabilization fund to be rolled out over the 3-year period. And I'm sure administration is scrambling away to try to figure out how to craft this motion. But I'm not in favor of giving 60,000 this year and asking administration to go back and find the funding sources. I think 120,000 to get over 3 years to get this exciting organization off the ground is more than reasonable. So I would like to make it some amending motions or an amended motion. I'm looking at Ms. Winter. She's looking back at me. So this will be fun.
So perhaps Ms. Mitchell can help with some wording and then we'll just, because
if I'm amending it, no. So the amending motion there, that, let me just read it before I.
Actually, I apologize. It's your motion, not Kathy's. Ms. Winter.
Councillor Monkoff-Swain, does this capture what you're looking for? For the main motion to amend?
It does.
So then council would, so you would move this motion, then council will vote on this motion. If this motion passes, then the main motion would be as amended with the motion.
Okay.
If this is the motion you would like to make, or if there's any changes to that motion.
Yeah, my only question around this one, and so thank you for helping me through this. My only question is, we talked about rolling it out over 3 years. Do we need to be that prescriptive in the motion?
Mr. Dowler, do you wish to impart some wisdom? Oh, there you are. Hang on. I've got too many mics on. That's the problem. There we go.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to be helpful, but I do agree that we probably want to be more prescriptive in terms of the amounts per year. And so I think what's up there as a potential amending motion would be sufficient up to 120,000. And then we would basically break down the amounts per year. So $60,000 in 2022, $40,000 in 2023, and $20,000 in 2024.
Yep.
Ms. Winter, can maybe wordsmith that for us for a moment? Take your time. Thank you, Mr. Diller.
Mayor?
Yes.
Could I call?
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute recess and we'll be back at 7:12. Thank you.
I did hear a little bit of conversation about what we're doing right now, so I'm just going to go a little bit over the process. So what we're currently doing, Councillor Monkoff-Swain is going to make an amending motion to the main motion that Councillor Miller moved. So council will vote on that amending motion. If that motion passes, then the motion will change to reflect what Councillor Monkoff-Swain and council voted for. If that motion fails, then we'll go back to the main motion that Councillor Miller passed. So what I'll do is I'll put up the motion to amend, which I'll ask Councillor Monkoff-Swain to move, which I think we've captured everything that you are wanting in that. Then it will also have the motion as amended to show you what it will look like and the main motion. Is there any
Okay.
questions? Or are
No,
we-
that's exactly what I thought we would
Okay,
do. That's great.
perfect.
So please put the amendment motion on the screen so Sam can move it in a moment here when it's ready. Thank you. And I see it's there now. So Sam, you have the floor.
So the top motion would be the motion.
Yeah, no, I
that we
just,
would.
before I read it, I just want
Yeah,
to make
for
sure.
sure.
Perfect. As always, it's great work from you and your team, Shalane. Thank you. So I'll move that the motion is amended that by the end of 2022, administration negotiate and approve a 3-year funding agreement that will allow the city to provide a grant in the amount of $120,000 to be funded from the Financial Stabilization Reserve and paid $60,000 in the first year, $40,000 in the second year, and $20,000 in the third year to the Community Circle Thrift Center and Leduc and District Food Bank for the purpose of establishing a food bank in Beaumont.
Is that correct, Ms. Winter?
Correct. So it will have council vote on this motion.
Okay, I have to ask the question. I believe Sam read the second motion on the screen as amended. Was he not supposed to read the first one? Motion
first-
to amend?
The first one, the motion to amend.
Okay.
Sorry, my apologies.
Councilor McCoskey, would you
I
please read
did.
the first motion on the screen, please?
Just making sure the mayor is alive and.
My
Make
apologies.
sure I'm
I
paying attention.
had thought that I
No, I
said the first motion on the
I
screen.
saw-
I did.
I
Thank
saw
you.
highlights and I got very excited. So I'll read what I'm
So the
supposed to.
first one never happened, right? Okay,
Yeah, good point.
Mulligan.
all right, here we go.
Wow. Just, okay, let's go. I apologize. That 60,000 be deleted and replaced with 120,000 and that the words a 3-year be added before the words quote funding agreement and that the words and be paid 60,000 in the first year, $40,000 in the second year and $20,000 in the third year be added after the words quote reserve.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Discussion on the motion, please. Any questions from council on this amendment as read out? Renee, you're good? No questions, I mean? Thank you. All right. Oh, Councillor Miller, you have a question. Go ahead, Ashley.
Sorry, I don't, and I see I see Gert and Paul there and they're shaking their heads, so I do have to ask.
If you took for the purpose of discussion, on that last part, then it would be fine. But we're not establishing. It's a satellite. Okay, let's vote on the amendment first, because that has to be passed first. Then we'll
Okay.
discuss the motion that you've put forward to vote on. We still have a chance to just debate that motion once the amendment's put through. And okay, I'll get to that in a minute here. Thank you, Councillor Miller, for that. Any further questions from council on the amended motion in front of us? Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote accordingly. Councillor Tessier, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, council. That motion passes unanimously. Having said that, engaging the audience is not something we normally tend to do, so we're being quite latitude today, but I do appreciate that. So having said the comments that I didn't really hear, but I did kind of hear, which is a good thing. Do we need to make any changes? Ms. Winter, please. Okay, am I doing buttons or you doing buttons? Sorry, I'm getting confused. Okay, sorry. Okay, go ahead. All right.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have a motion as amended. So I would say that where we have establishing a food bank in Beaumont, we could have a friendly amendment for satellite food.
Or can Councillor Miller simply change her own motion? It has, instead of having a friendly one, can she simply do that? It is her motion.
We've
or can
already
we not?
amended that motion.
Okay, so
The
now we're
motion
in
has
the
been
amendment
amended and
cycles.
now the motion as this one here is now the motion.
Okay, no problem. we need to make another amendment, we can do that.
No, we don't need an
Sorry.
amendment to add satellite food bank. We can add a friendly
I really can't
amendment.
hear you, sorry, pardon me.
We can add the word satellite to this, this motion right
Right.
now. We can add that to it as a friendly. We don't need to do another motion for it.
Right, so I mean, we did. Okay, we'll do a friendly amendment to add the word satellite and then we're good. Okay, where will the word satellite, somebody make that friendly motion, please? Councillor vanNieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Good discussion. And I like the detail here. So yeah, I would put a friendly amendment forward to add the word satellite in front of the word food bank for ultimate clarity here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Once I see it on the screen, do we need to vote on that friendly before we do the actual motion, or we can just simply vote on the motion now that it's friendly?
I've added it there.
We're good? I'm going to proceed. All right. Councillor Miller, would you please restate your motion, please, for the record? Thank you.
The second one.
Yeah, second one.
Yes, I move that by the end of 2022, administration negotiate and approve a 3-year funding agreement that will allow the city to provide a grant in the amount of $120,000 to be funded from the Financial Stabilization Reserve and paid $60,000 in the first year, $40,000 in the second year, and $20,000 in the third year to the Community Circle Thrift Center and Leduc and District Food Bank for the purpose of establishing a satellite food bank in Beaumont.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll simply say I think it's a great motion and I'm very happy to vote in favor of it. I like to speak last and sometimes everything's already been said, so I won't say anything more. Council, I will ask you to vote accordingly. Councillor Tessier.
In favor.
In favor, motion carries unanimously. Never so much trouble trying to spend money before. It just seemed to be funny. Finally got it done. So very pleased. Thank you, Council. It's an exciting step for Beaumont going forward with the food bank coming to Beaumont. So we're very excited about that. And with that, we'll move on to the next part of our agenda, which is, here we are, here's 7D, local transit planning moving forward. Mr. Wong, I believe you're presenting. Thank you. Should be on, I believe.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. So good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm here tonight to provide Council with options on local transit planning and seek Council's direction on future local transit planning options. As you know, the city currently only has a commuter transit between Beaumont and the city of Edmonton, which is at the Heritage Valley Transit Center, and there is currently no local transit services within the city limits. The benefits of having a well-planned local transit system not only provides sustainable mobility choices to residents in Beaumont to be less dependent on private vehicle for travel within the city limits, but also addresses the needs of youth, seniors, low-income residents, and others who may not have access to a private vehicle, and minimizes the impact on climate change, in particular, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Like other planning initiatives, transit planning will benefit from more robust background research and data collection, including a pilot of an on-demand transit service to understand the current conditions and needs, challenges, opportunities, and to develop a plan or provide options to achieve the desired result of providing mobility options for the city residents. This background data will help the city design and operate a local transit system that meets the needs of the residents. Administration thus recommends a three-pronged approach to plan for local transit in the city. One, to undertake a study to understand the potential ridership for local transit, benefits or challenges, and identify pros and cons of several local transit delivery models. Secondly, to undertake a pilot on-demand transit service in the city. And thirdly, work with EMTSC, the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission, to develop a local transit service that will complement the overall regional transit network in the Edmonton metropolitan region. Specifically, the administration recommends to Council tonight, first, to undertake a study of potential ridership for local transit and report back to Council by the end of Q4 2022. And secondly, by the end of Q4 2022, report back to Council with funding options for a pilot of on-demand transit services in Beaumont. And I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions Council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Appreciate the presentation, and the detail outlined in our presentation package is very good. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from Council for our presenter? We will be asked to look at probably two motions on this agenda item this evening. So I'll take questions at this time. I have Councillor McGrath-Swain, followed by Councillor vanNieuwkerk, followed by Councillor McCook. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for the presentation. Please don't take this the wrong way, but the previous council kind of, I'll say, asked administration to look into this previously. Is it fair to say that, given the whole challenges of the pandemic, the whole way that people are moving, it's not that we can throw that out because it's good results in the survey, but we need to go through and do a more detailed analysis of where we are today. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that is a fair assessment, and because the city previously has an understanding or general understanding of where the ridership to and from within the city, but we never have the data to support that. So in order to go ahead and design a delivery model, our recommendation is to have a data collection and to study where the demand is, and actually where and the timing, because I'd love to design a system whether it will be all day weekdays and some weekends, or just the peak hours to complement the regional transit. So that is why the city recommends a little bit research on the data collection and understanding of the ridership and the real needs in order to design the model.
Yeah, so I really appreciate the recommendation. On-demand transit has been talked about for quite a while, and I don't like making decisions because I think it's a good idea. I like the data to support that, and I think much more defensible to the community when we get in there. So, I see there are other folks looking for questions, so I won't get into it, but I just really appreciate the thoughtful approach on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor vanNieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And I just had a question on the, what we will get back for, should the first recommendation be put forward. So undertake a study of potential ridership for local transit, and then the pros and cons of various models, right? So I think the city has a pretty decent handle that, driving local transit in a circle on the ring road isn't where we likely are to get our success, and that likely, some type of an on-demand service is where we need to land. I think we know that, but to what you're saying is that, how do we support that with more wholesome data? Is that what the city is hoping to achieve by, if this first recommendation were passed?
Yes, that's correct. We just want to understand the problem statement a little bit more, so that to understand, like I said, the actual ridership and also the timing of the ridership, in order to provide local transit services. But also at the end of the day, I think we need to also look into the more broader regional perspective, because people may tap into the local transit services into the regional, going to City of Edmonton or any other municipalities in the region. So.
Yeah, and I like the general direction this is going. I'm just not quite. I'm not quite sure what we're getting back. It sounds like a really broad bit of information, because we're going to evaluate, well, maybe not. So we're looking for how many local riders are there? What are the pros and cons of the methods, right? And, and then, and transit delivery models, and then report back to council. So, I think that could be done fairly simply, but we would need to make sure that we're asking the right places, asking the right questions to the right people at the right times, to get what we're going. Because even if we, at the end of this, we said it was going to be a on-demand model, we still have to say what days is it operating. We still have to say from what hours does this service operate. And so those data gaps, I guess, I'm just talking through this. So those data gaps would be some of the information that you would be looking to get. Even though we're fairly certain that that's probably the best model, there's, what days and what time of day. So sorry, I'm just talking my way through this a little bit here. So,
or even like a mixture of delivery models. It would be part of the region will be running on the ring road, for example, and then the rest will be offering bus on demand. Maybe it's a mixture of
I think it might be a little bit premature to make that connection though, just because we haven't seen the region's plan yet, right? So, but maybe in between now and then we will. So it is maybe what you're thinking. Okay, thanks for entertaining that. I just needed to think through it a bit.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks so much for the report. It was definitely thorough and gave us a good amount of information to go off of with some background for understanding. So I appreciate that. It was also interesting to note that on page 96, that one of the largest reasons people use transit was for running errands, which may be more of a reason for us to explore on demand. I just thought that was interesting. At one point you said, we want to work with EMTSC to develop a local transit service that will complement the overall regional transit network in the Edmonton Metro region. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. So when you say this, is that to complement the transition that is already taking place, or were you looking for new additional information prior to the full transition that will work better for Beaumont?
The way to set up the EMTS setup, my understanding is that they will also operate our local transit services as a one brand under the EMTSC, but the local transit services will be 100% funded by the municipality. So the regional services will be over there. Okay. But then the local transit will operate as one brand under the EMTSC, but it is funded entirely by the municipality. Yes. That is why at the very early stage, we have already initiated discussion with the EMTSC that we are planning on investigating local transit options. So we want to make sure that they also in the discussion, so that when they operate our local transit, they know where we were coming from and how to take it and help us operate that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And then approximately how long will this study take? Will we have the results of the study before we begin the transition to EMTSC?
The EMTSC, we are working on the 2023 open end day service plan as we speak. And the target date will be by July of this year. The service plan will be done and approved by the EMTSC board. And then the EMTSC, the administration will plan on the opening day. So but this local transit services, as we will plan and integrate with the operations later on as we speak. So yeah.
Okay, so this specific study though?
For now it is study, but for example, if we can negotiate with a vendor to help us on the pilot, and the data collection will be done, for example, within several months, then we don't need to wait until Q4 to come back to and present the report to council. So, but we just want to make sure we have the time and we have the resources to work with external vendors and people and procure the consulting services to help us for the data gathering. So we just put a date there just to make sure we have enough time. But I assume we don't necessarily have to wait until the end of the year to come back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnard, you have the floor, Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Wong. not sure I understood correctly, but is the service provider doing the engagement as well as the pilot study?
For the bus on demand pilot, probably not the public engagement because we're running the service as a pilot for 6 or 8 months or even a year, depending on the duration. But but part of the data collection, that is with the consultant, we may need to go out to work on with the public and probably get some data collection, a survey as to if you are familiar with one. I'm not too familiar, but I know there is one type of survey that is called the household travel demand survey. And assuming you take one day and you record all the trips that you make, whether you are taking transit or the driver or even a rider on a vehicle. So the to and from at each time, and then that data collection will be saying this community, this how many people are going from this place to that place. So, and then statistically speaking, we will have a full picture on a weekday and on a weekend, so, and then we can, based on that data, we'll be able to identify the actual needs within the community of where the people are going. And then from that data, we can design the routes to satisfy the needs of the people, because the local transit is supposed to take people from where they want to go from where they are. So, and that is probably one of the methods, but I'm not suggesting we are going there, but that is one of the methods that when we work with the consultant, we will be investigating that. But if we are taking that survey approach, then definitely it will be a public engagement. Yeah.
Okay, and if I could, Mayor, just to clarify,
Yes.
there's two, I think there's two motions here, or two steps, two recommendations. One is the study, or the study of ridership, and the other is the coming back to council with funding options for a pilot.
Yeah, for the
So
pilot
the pilot
one.
isn't necessarily going to happen until this comes back to council.
That's correct.
But it doesn't. But the two timelines are the same. So are they coming back at the same time? I guess that's your intention.
We can do as quickly and the best we could, but the data collection part, it is much easier to accomplish because there are transportation engineering, transportation planner, consulting firms that are out there. We can send an RFP for a submission, but with regarding to the pilot on demand, we need to identify the vendor first and then negotiate the agreement on the terms and the durations and the design, for example, the route and where those virtual stops are, and then develop the mobile apps or whatever. So
Okay.
that may be a little bit a step behind. Yeah.
Well, I would suggest that. My last comment or question is when you're doing the consultation, the engagement, I hope it's not only going to be online, because I do believe there are a number of people who would perhaps take advantage of the service who may not reply there. So using as many channels as we can would be my hope.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miller, Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you. My question is kind of feeding off what Kathy just said regarding the public engagement piece. Just reading when it was 54% know little about it and 52 don't know anything about on-demand transit from the previous study. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to know the options for the engagement and how that's going to be conducted. If you don't know right now,
I don't
that's
know
fine.
right now. I have to work with the consultant.
Right. Yeah, I just, obviously the goal will be to have those numbers decreased so that there's more knowledge on this.
Certainly.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tessier, do you have any questions? I'm assuming not. Thank you very much. Mr. Wong, one quick question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Should these motions pass this evening to proceed accordingly, fourth quarter comes back, how soon can the report be in front of council? Would it be in the second meeting in January, early February? My question is going to the point of, should we proceed? How fast can the pilot project begin after that point? It'd be nice to have the pilot project with some winter months and some early spring months to get a feel for winter travel versus spring travel within our borders as part of the pilot. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, your expected timelines from Q4 report being finished in our hands, decision time, and get the pilot going.
Yeah.
What's your expectation on that?
Yeah, ideally speaking, and if everything goes fine and if we can, after tonight, if council agrees to and direct the administration to go and negotiate with a vendor, for example, the ideal situation is to have the pilot up and running before school starts. That is my take on it, because you will be able to catch something that is before school starts in September. So for example, if we start the pilot mid-August or early August and run until the end of the school year. So we will catch the peak from September to April, the school seasons, right? And also because of all these people that are working, they will be working even during the summertime. But the first couple of weeks will give us the baseline of what is before the school starts. So that is the ideal situation. But if not, then we will do our best to, for example, run, if the worst case scenario is to start the pilot next January and run until maybe August yeah. So that is what I'm suspecting. We will do our best to get the vendor ASAP and come back to council because there is the money involved. So we need council to approve to spend on the pilot. So I hope we will be able to not wait until Q4, but as soon as possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good enough. Thank you. Any further? Oh, Steve, you have a follow-up question? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, no question. Just looking to move the first recommendation.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you. That's the next comment saying, is there what member of council willing to move the first recommendation? I believe Councilman Newkirk, you wish to proceed with that?
Yeah, I'll move the first one there. I'll move that administration undertake a study of potential ridership for local transit, including the benefits, challenges, pros and cons of various local transit delivery models for the city, and report back to council by the end of Q4 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any question on the motion or questions on the motion? Seeing none, I will ask council to vote accordingly. Councillor Tessier, how do you vote?
In favor, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. That passed unanimously. Thank you. Is a member of council willing to move the second motion that's on the screen in front of us? Councillor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
That by the end of Q4 2022, administration report back to council with funding options for a pilot of on-demand transit services.
Thank you, Councillor. Any question on the motion? Seeing none, council, please vote accordingly. Councillor Tessier, how do you vote?
In favor, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. That passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Wong, for your presentation this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on our agenda this evening is council inquiries. Sorry. That was on consent. That was on consent, yeah. Council inquiries, responses, and reports. My construction debris information was provided, as was Councillor vanNieuwkerk. Are there any council inquiries this evening to be made administration? Councillor vanNieuwkerk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yes, I have two inquiries this evening. I'll just read them aloud here. So the first inquiry is surrounding dust suppression. Please provide an update on any planned dust suppression or dust controls for Township Road 505, 50th Avenue, from Range Road 243 up to and just past the West Recreation Site. And if not, could this be considered? The second is around speed limits in the West Recreation Site. These kind of go hand in hand. Please provide an update on if there are any plans to review the speed limit on Township Road 505, 50th Ave, from Range Road 243 West past the West Recreation Site, as this area will soon become available for public use.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
They're on the record and they'll be responded to as early as possible. Are there any further councillor inquiries this evening for administration? Councillor Tessier, nothing, I'm assuming. Thank you. Are there any councillor responses? I'm not responsible, reports this evening to be brought forward. Seeing none, we'll move on to our agenda into item 8, pardon me, item 9, SAYO update. Mr. Schwartz, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Daneluik, and to all of council. I've got one update this evening. we're pleased to announce that tomorrow we'll be launching the BSRC Family Membership Program. It's a partnership with the library. We've talked to council about this before. So what it essentially means is a family with a valid library card will be able to borrow a family BSRC membership from the library for 2 weeks at a time. We're going to be issuing a news release tomorrow, and yeah, we'll be launching that program tomorrow morning. So it's pretty exciting. It's a unique program for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Any questions for Mr. Schwartz? Seeing none, we'll proceed with our agenda. Item number 10, notices of motion. I notice of the motion from members of council this evening. I know I've got one or two myself, but I'm going to let council proceed. Many members of council. Councillor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two.
Please proceed.
That at the May 24th council meeting, I will move that by the end of the second quarter of 2022, administration prepare a report on options for a school pilot project that would offer BSRC passes in schools, and that the report would include the following: options for types of passes, budget implications, age restrictions, i.e. without parental supervision, information on activities that could be accessed, and potential liabilities and cost of the program. Or cost of the passes.
Is that sufficient, Kat?
Yeah.
No problem. Thank you. CEO Schwartz, you have a question on the?
Yeah, the concern I have is the timeline. Second quarter of 2022. We're running out of time here. I'm not certain that we can turn that around. You did? Okay. I withdraw the question.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, okay. That's okay. It's one of those procedural nights. Things just sort of happen, you know? Thank you. Okay, got that one passed on. Councillor McCook, you have a second one, I believe.
Yes.
Please proceed. When it's on the screen, sorry.
That at the May 24th, 2022 council meeting, I will move that at the end of the third quarter of 2022, administration prepare a report on adaptive programming in Beaumont, and that the report include the following: current adaptive programming available, opportunities for expanding programming, and program availability, i.e. number of registrations available.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, further notice of the motion before I believe mine will be on the screen. Ms. Mitchell, when you have the opportunity, please. No rush, thanks. Thank you. That by the end of June, at the May 24th, 2022 council meeting, I will move that by the end of June 2022, administrations prepare a report on installing crosswalk lights up to 6 existing crosswalks in Beaumont, and that the report include the following: identifying potential high traffic crosswalk sites, types of light standards available, such as colored lights, solar, budget considerations for and funding source, and timelines for installation. Thank you. And the second notice of motion will be at the May 24th, 2022 council meeting. I will move that by the end of June 2022, administration prepare a report on planning a minor football home game opener event, and that the report include the following: identify options for event, associated costs, and funding source. Thank you, Ms. Winter. Are there any additional notice of the motion? I believe there is not, to my knowledge. Seeing none. Thank you, council. That concludes our council this evening on open session. We will now move into closed session. And is there a member of council willing to move into closed session? Councilor Barnhart.
She got to her button first.
No problem.
Thank you. I would move we go into closed session there.
Thank you.
Would you like me to read it then? That council meet in private to discuss matters protected from disclosure under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, sections 24 and 29 at 7:45 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote accordingly. Councillor Tessier, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, council. We will